Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of Film Canada Press. Got a little update for you guys. I've mentioned in my last couple of videos how there was some mind-blowing developments in my case against Constable Ryan Hankewich, who assaulted me on April 8th of 2021 and violated COVID protocols that were in effect at the time, and also violated my constitutional right to film in a public location. The case was dismissed by this man, the Chief of Police Dale McPhee, Chief of the Edmonton Police Service. I've addressed him in person in the past to let him know that public photography is not a crime. However, politician that he is, he had no guts to reinforce the Constitution, which he swore to protect, and instead decided that he was not going to address that. And much before that, in fact, about 2 months after the assault, a new service directive was brought in expressly forbidding people from taking pictures in the public lobby of the downtown police headquarters, possibly in any police headquarters. It's Service Directive SD-015, I believe. So at any rate, I took the case to the Law Enforcement Review Board, and at that point in time, a large number of sleazy attempts were made to paint me in a bad light. They deliberately omitted important closed circuit footage in the hopes of shielding Constable Ryan Hankewich behind a pillar, so that you actually couldn't see him the moment he assaulted me and violated the COVID protocols, and then claimed later that, well, you know, there was no proof. Then they went through this whole list of carte blanche charges that they believed that that placed him lawfully so that he could assault me, including general mischief, causing a disturbance. They actually tried that. Do you remember, guys, when we did with Canadian Rights Media and Canadian Rights Review and the Chad and some of those guys? And we actually went over this in great detail and looked into that law. And the main case was R versus Loans in 1992, or Lonis, okay, where the Supreme Court clearly defined what causing a disturbance was, and that the intention of that law was that it was a publicly manifested, like an outwardly, externally manifested violent noise or disruption that disturbed people from doing their normal business. Okay, so the fact that a single mind was temporarily disturbed, or that somebody was offended or upset in some minor way, did not constitute a public disturbance. And then they tried the Trespass to Premises Act, an act that's already been thrown out of court once as unconstitutional, that it could not be saved under Section 1, was brought back in on appeal with dissent, and because of that, the charges against, or the conditions against the girl, it was a 13-year-old girl who was kicked off of all Edmonton Transit property for committing a series of assaults. And because the conditions were stayed because of the dissent, that case never made it to the Supreme Court, which is so we never got to see what would happen in that situation, keeping in mind that was a situation of an actual criminal who was banned from public property. In my case, I'm a person taking pictures in a public lobby of a police station while turning in a FOIP request. All right, so I'm just giving you guys a real crash course, a basic brush over on what kind of sleazy tricks these guys tried to use against me. You know, they really downplayed it. Some of the officers, like an officer, Kara Yaremko, actually went so far as to see, she said, I don't even see any assault. I didn't even see any physical force. She was standing 2 feet away with her leather gloves on, holding the door open right behind Hankewich as he tried to leg hook me. And then she continued to stand around behind me when we were outside as the police cornered me after he forced me outside and pushed me all the way back to the bench. Okay, I'm just giving you guys a small snapshot. Now, why am I bringing this up now, guys? Well, guess what? The case was concluded on July 7th because Constable Ryan Hankewich resigned from the Edmonton Police Force. It's a sleazy loophole, in my opinion, that the Alberta police sometimes use. There was a case of a guy in Calgary who committed a heinous assault. He got off on that. There was a guy who I think committed a sexual assault, a chief from Medicine Hat. He used the same tactic. It's a tactic that they use every once in a while, and it's when police officers just resign to avoid misconduct. And the reasons why they might do this, they don't want to pay for their lawyers, or they just want to reapply to the police, whether it's that force or another force nearby. I'm just going to close a couple of things here because I'm getting blorks. Okay, so they might want to. This guy just might want to go down the road to the next town over, to Calgary or whatever, and apply with them, and then this mark won't be on his record. So it'll give him a better chance of getting a job with another department, or maybe he intends to reapply back to the police, or maybe he never quit. We don't know. There's no information to prove to me that he ever even quit in the first place. Okay, so at any rate, because it was stated that he had quit, he had turned in his letter of resignation on July 7th. The case was concluded, and the chief lawyer, Jeffrey Westman, went out of his way to remind the LERB that they lost jurisdiction and that the chief lost jurisdiction over this case starting on July 7th. Why is all of this important? Because I've now received a correspondence, not from Jeffrey Westman, but from some complete strangers. Some complete and total strangers who had nothing to do with the original case, the case which has been concluded, not only confirmed by the chief's own representative, but confirmed by Jackie Kozar of the Law Enforcement Review Board that the case is concluded. And according to the Law Enforcement Review Board appeal rules, this case is now in the public domain, and any implied undertaking to keep the record private is eradicated. It becomes public domain. In fact, this case should be, if it's not already, it should be very shortly produced on the CanLII site, just like all of the LERB cases. However, because of the circumstances, because of the sleaziness of these police officers, because it's so obvious, in my opinion, that it's so obvious that they went out of their way to commit a crime here, to let an officer who was proven to have committed misconduct, and they don't want to discipline him for it, that is my opinion, that they are now trying to, they've sent this letter to myself and to the Law Enforcement Review Board, and keep in mind this case has been concluded for weeks, okay? And they are now trying to convince the LERB that they still have jurisdiction, but only over the part where it talks about the implied undertaking. In other words, they don't want you to hear what happened. They don't want you to know what happened in their documents, the sleaziness of their investigation, and they don't want the public to know that police officers are resigning to avoid discipline, because if the public found that out, they'd be in big trouble. That's what they're trying to cover up, in my opinion. So this guy that you're looking at right now, this sleazebag, Dale McPhee, who refuses to admit that public photography is not a crime, who tries to create service directives to bypass the Constitution, a man who has all sorts of backdoor, sleazy tricks and tactics to get out of being disciplined for his behavior, for the behavior of his officers, keeping in mind that there are lunatics walking around, murdering people in Chinatown, exposing themselves on the streets downtown. We are getting our cars broken into every day, and these guys won't lift a finger. Leave it to the insurance. These guys are useless, and we're paying them over $400 million a year, and this is what they're spending their time and money on, to make sure that you don't hear what happened in this LERB case, because they don't want you to know that they're letting police officers resign to avoid discipline. They don't want you to know that they're lying and omitting evidence to try to paint civilians in a bad light, law-abiding civilians who have done nothing wrong but taking pictures in a public lobby of a downtown police station. Completely innocent people. Time and time again, they are committing these crimes against the citizens and letting their officers off scot-free. This is exactly why the police cannot be allowed to police themselves any longer. In fact, with all due respect to the LERB, I feel bad for them. I really do. I want to believe anyways that by and large the members of the LERB have good intentions, but they are totally handcuffed. And just like me, they are constantly sued, threatened, coerced. Loopholes are used. Loopholes that are intended, by the way, remember this, to protect law-abiding police officers who are engaged in their lawful conduct. It happens sometimes that when a police officer means well and is trying to enact a lawful business, their lawful business, that sometimes a scenario happens where theoretically something might be slightly off kilter. Just like you might theoretically step 1 foot out of the crosswalk as you're turning onto the sidewalk. theoretically you're not in the crosswalk anymore, so theoretically that's jaywalking. And if a cop wanted to be a douchebag, they could charge you with jaywalking. All right? Is it going to follow through in a court of law? Of course not, because there's no public interest in it. No judge is going to find you guilty of that. However, it is theoretically illegal. So, okay, so what I'm saying is that we don't want to charge cops who are just theoretically stepping out of line slightly while they're doing their jobs properly. That's why we have special rules that apply only to police officers, so that they can do their jobs without that constant fear hanging over their heads that they might step slightly out of line and find themselves in a courtroom. But that's not what we're talking about here. We are talking about bold-faced liars, violent liars, people who have multiple breaches, multiple misconducts, all right? People who should not have a stripe on their arm, people who should not have a badge on their chest, committing crimes against innocent civilians, and then conducting a faulty, poorly investigated, poorly researched investigation with clear evidence available to them, which they omitted, in my opinion, on purpose to absolve their police officer of committing crimes. And this is not just my case. You can now go find, I'll leave a link maybe again, I don't remember if I did this last time. There's now a database of previous misconduct cases brought against the police, where you can actually go and search any name, any crime you want, any year you want, going back into the 90s, I think, in the early 90s. And you can actually look up police officers name by name to see their history of misconduct. It might not be complete, but it will be very, very, very good, and it's going to have a lot of stuff. And if you go look up Ryan Hankewich, you're going to see he's got a whole pile of misconduct charges and cases against him. All right? That's exactly why Dale McPhee wants this out of the public. He doesn't want you to know that police officers are resigning to avoid misconduct, and he doesn't want you to know that he is a fraud, that he is a coward, that he refuses to do his job and investigate these cases properly. It's more important to him to paint civilians in a bad light and let his officers off of the hook so that he can keep his own reputation and keep his own job. That's what he wants. That's why he's doing this, in my humble opinion. So I'm letting you guys know this information now, because it is not an opinion. It is a fact that the case is concluded. It is concluded. It's been concluded. I have the correspondence from both Jeffrey Westman, and I have the correspondence from Jackie Kozar of the LERB. It's not an opinion. It is a fact. It is concluded, and the case is now in the public domain. And so I'm letting you guys know this information now, because God only knows what's going on in these guys' heads. Who the hell knows what's going to happen, right? Who knows that there's not some wingnut that's going to say, oh, you know what? Yeah, we changed our mind. Yeah, you're allowed to have jurisdiction, but only in this one little area. Who the hell knows? Honestly, I'm asking. I have no idea. What I do know is that this whole process from start to finish is a complete sham. There is no civilian oversight in Alberta. There is none whatsoever. The LERB are useless. And I don't mean to say that they have no good intentions. I don't know that, whether their intentions are good or bad. But what I do know is that they are totally, totally impotent. You think that their job is to make sure that police officers who are investigated by their own police, that if that investigation is faulty, that it will go to the Civilian Oversight Board, and that if they find out that that case was faulty, that they will charge that original police officer. That's not what's going on here. That's not what's happening at all. What their job is to make a decision on whether the decision by the chief of police falls within a large range of possible parameters. It doesn't have to be accurate. It doesn't even have to be reasonable. He can be completely and totally unreasonable and just say, you know what, I don't feel like doing this. He's also got another backdoor, where even if the person is found unequivocally to be guilty, and he has no choice but to conclude that, he can still say, oh, you know what, it's just a minor matter, and that's my ruling, and therefore the case is concluded, and you won't even get to the Law Enforcement Review Board. Keep that little nugget in the back of your mind, because we'll find out what happens when these two officers who arrested me on public property finally get their day to hear the verdict on that one. That one's been going on now for like a year and a half, and they're still no closer to solving that situation. So I wanted to come out and share with you guys a little bit right now while I can. I don't know what the future will hold. It makes no difference to me. I'm going to let you guys know what happened. It's my case, and the case has been concluded, and nothing's going to change that. And I'm going to let you guys know everything that happened. So I'm just giving you guys the crash course at this point in time. so that you'll know a little bit more information. As I say, I have irrefutable proof from both correspondence from both Jackie Kozar and from Jeffrey Westman that the case is concluded, and according to the LERB appeal rules and the Police Act of Alberta, the case is concluded and becomes public domain. It's probably on Canley right now. If it's not, it's because somebody's dragging their feet, but the case is concluded. It is public domain, and that's why I'm sharing it with you guys. We'll see what happens after this, if they're going to try to, convince YouTube to make me take this down or something like that. It's irregardless. Like I say, it's my case, and I have irrefutable proof. And in fact, I'll probably put up a couple of pieces of correspondence just to prove that to you guys, to show, I think I already did that actually in the last video, but just to prove to you guys that the case is concluded, and that it's been concluded for 3 weeks. And now this sleaze bag, Dale McPhee, this sleaze bag who makes $350,000 a year, this sleaze bag is now trying to stop you from hearing what happened in this case, because he doesn't want you to know that he's a crook. I'm Film Canada Press. We'll catch you guys next time. Peace.